Pope Francis dies at the age of 88. Vacationers return home on the last day of the Easter holiday. And a civet cat caught in IFC Mall in Central. Hello and welcome to TVB News. I'm Melissa Hekalea. Pope Francis has died at the age of 88. The head of the Roman Catholic Church died at 7:30 in the morning at the Vatican. Less than 24 hours earlier, he had presided over Easter Sunday Mass. The first Latin American pope, Francis had spent recent weeks in hospital battling pneumonia and bronchitis. David Garrett reports.
A moment to pause and reflect before the official announcement, the death of Pope Francis. With the symbol of Jesus on the cross behind them, Cardinal Kevin Farrell with colleagues announced the devastating news. On Easter Monday morning, Francis passed away. Brothers and sisters, with deep sorrow, I must announce the death of our Holy Father Francis. At 7:35 this morning, the Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the house of the Father. His entire life was dedicated to the service of the Lord and his church. He taught us courage and universal love. A true disciple of the Lord Jesus, we commend the soul of Pope Francis to the infinite, merciful love of God. The exact cause of death was not given, although the Pope had spent several weeks in hospital this year with pneumonia and bronchitis. A quiet calm in St. Peter's Square, with the sad news still filtering through. Less than 24 hours before the Pope died, the same square was packed for Easter Sunday and what were Francis's final public statements. The Pontiff had wished the world Happy Easter at Sunday Mass.
Cari fratelli e sorelle.
His voice was strained but clear. He was discharged from hospital only last month. Francis toured the square in the Popemobile for 50 minutes, blessing well-wishers in one of his final acts. This is being called his final salute. Francis was the first Latin American pope, born in Buenos Aires, Argentina in 1936. He became pope in 2013, taking over from Benedict XVI. This pope leaves a legacy. In a wheelchair in his final years, Francis continued to spread the word of God globally, passionate about the environment, migrants' rights, and especially the poor.
He traveled around the world and always met with people in the slums, in prisons, everyone on the margins of the society. They were his priority. He was the Pope of the peripheries because he believed that that was who needed to hear the message of the gospel the most.
Tributes have poured in from around the world. US Vice President J.D. Vance met with Francis only yesterday in one of the Pope's last official acts. Vance today describing the meeting as beautiful, although he says the Pope was obviously ill. Vance wrote, "May God rest his soul," and says his heart goes out to all who loved him. David Garrett, TVB News.
Today is the last day of the Easter holiday. As of 4 p.m., the Immigration Department said more than 310,000 people entered the city via different checkpoints. Memo Singhai reports.
Time flies when you are enjoying yourself. At the West Kowloon high-speed rail station, many travelers are seen with suitcases and gift bags as they return to the city on the final day of the Easter break. Some residents said they went back to their hometowns for tomb sweeping. I came back from Guangdong. I didn't want to travel in the afternoon because I thought it would be too crowded, this man said. We visited Huizhou, which has a much slower living pace than Hong Kong. We didn't see many travelers at the clearance, so we came out fast, this mother said. Several tourists arrived in the city via the high-speed rail.
It was busy, yeah, but normal, yeah. Okay.
Was it difficult for you to get a train ticket?
Someone takes for me, an agency. I think 15 years ago.
Very easy to take it. The whole procedure was very easy to do. I thought when I arrived here it was very crowded, but I thought it was very fast. I think I'm just going to walk around and see how the city moves.
To ensure a smooth passenger traffic flow, the Immigration Department said they will maintain close communication with mainland authorities. Crowds appeared at Luohu Station in the afternoon. Police officers were deployed. On the first day of the Easter holiday, nearly 720,000 people departed the city. Outbound travelers on Friday totaled 830,000, while Sunday's recorded figure was more than 500,000. The majority of them traveled to the mainland. Ms. 9, TVB News.
A civet cat ventured into a shopping mall in Central this morning. Officers from several government departments teamed up to capture the animal and eventually removed it from IFC Mall about 3 hours later. The 1-meter-long civet cat lying on a beam near the mall's glass curtain wall, sometimes walking back and forth on the beam or just sunbathing up there. Staff of the shopping mall spotted the animal at around 7 a.m. Police, firefighters, and agriculture, fisheries, and conservation department officers were called to the scene and tried to catch it by using a net. After some rounds of hide and seek, the civet cat suddenly jumped to the ground and was caught by firefighters. It wasn't injured. Agriculture, fisheries, and conservation department officers put it in a cage before sending it to the Kaduri Farm and Botanic Garden for further examination. With the mandatory Provident Fund offsetting mechanism set to be canceled next Thursday, some employers and employee groups say many are still unsure about the new arrangement. They hope the government will step up relevant publicity efforts. Jackie Lin reports.
If you have worked for the same company for 2 years, once dismissed, you will receive severance payment from your employer. If you've worked there for at least 5 years, you will also be entitled to a maximum of $390,000 in long service payment. Currently, employers can tap the accrued benefits from employers' mandatory MPF contributions to offset such payments. With such arrangements poised to end next month, how will such payments be calculated? This man said he's not sure about that. Similar confusion to this man. The government has earmarked $33.5 billion for subsidizing employers over the move for 25 years. In the first 3 years, the expenditure on severance pay and long service payments shall not exceed $500,000. The employer will pay a maximum of $3,000, and the remaining amount will be covered by the government. If it surpasses $500,000, the employer will shoulder 50% of the expenses. From the 4th year onwards, the employer's contribution increases year by year. The Small and Medium Enterprises Association surveyed more than 1,000 employers. 92% of them said they do not have a clear understanding of the arrangement. The association's president Andrew Kwok said there's bound to be pressure heaped on employers, but he believes firms are willing to shoulder more expenses as hiring new workers might incur even more costs for adjustment. Kwok estimates that with the abolition of the MPF offsetting mechanism, the employer will help each worker save up more than $10,000 every year, which is equivalent to 2 to 4% of the employee's salary. Jacqueline, TVB News.
The mandatory Provident Fund offsetting mechanism will end on May 1st. The MPF Authority's public consultation period on the MPF will end next Monday. In a blog post, MPFA Chair Aisha McPherson-Lau wrote that the public consultation conducted since March 28th has received a variety of views. Some agreed with the proposals in the consultation paper, which would help enhance employees' autonomy in managing their MPF. She said under the new arrangement, workers can transfer all their mandatory contributions of their current employers to an MPF trustee and scheme of their choice in their mandatory contribution account or personal account once a year. And such flexibility applies to employees who've joined a new company both after or before the abolition of the offsetting arrangement. The first ministerial meeting of the China-Indonesia Joint Foreign and Defense Ministerial Dialogue opened in Beijing today. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and Defense Minister Dong Jun chaired the high-level meeting and exchanged views with their Indonesian counterparts, Foreign Minister Sugiono and Defense Minister Safri Samsoedin. The meeting, the first such 2+2 ministerial dialogue, convened as the two countries this year celebrate 75 years of diplomatic ties. Topping the agenda are bilateral ties, defense cooperation, and international regional cooperation. After the meeting, Wang said wanton imposition of tariffs will severely undermine regular trade between countries, and they'll continue to defend the smooth operations of supply chains and regional economies. In Beijing, the Commerce Ministry said China firmly opposes any deal between the United States and its trading partners that could compromise China's interests, with a stern warning that it will take resolute and reciprocal countermeasures. The remarks came as Beijing and Washington are locked in a trade war that has seen skyrocketing tit-for-tat tariffs. The ministry said China is ready to strengthen solidarity and coordination with all parties to stand on the side of fairness and justice and uphold the multilateral trading system. Danny Zhou has more.
China's Ministry of Commerce responded to recent news reports that the Trump administration is pressuring trading partners to curb trade ties with Beijing in exchange for tariff exemptions. In a statement published on Monday, a spokesman said the U.S. has arbitrarily imposed tariffs while pressuring countries to engage in so-called reciprocal tariff negotiations. The spokesman called the measure unilateral bullying that breached international norms and hegemonic politics under the guise of fairness, adding that appeasement does not bring peace and compromise does not lead to respect. The spokesman also said China respects all parties that seek to resolve their trade disputes with the United States through equal consultation, but it will not accept any attempt by other nations to trade away its interests. Maintaining a hardline stance in the face of Washington's tariff bombshell, China is set to convene an informal United Nations Security Council meeting this week to discuss the tactics of weaponizing tariffs by the American government. U.S. President Donald Trump recently said he was in no rush to wrap up trade deals with other nations, which his administration hopes would box out China. The tariff tensions have clearly created dilemmas for Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam and Indonesia that concurrently benefit from trade and investment ties with China and the U.S. Vietnam, which faces U.S. levies of 46%, will reportedly clamp down on Chinese goods transiting through its territory and tighten controls on sensitive exports to China, including U.S.-made chips and semiconductors. Flight tracking data showed a second Boeing jet intended for use by a Chinese airline landed back at the U.S. territory of Guam on Monday after leaving the Playmakers Zhoushan Completion Center. This occurred shortly after China ordered its airlines to halt acceptance of Boeing planes. Meanwhile, a group of prominent economists, including 2 Nobel laureates, have signed a declaration condemning Trump's misguided tariff policy. In the letter, they said it has no basis in economic reality and raised concerns about how the tariffs could lead to a self-inflicted recession. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
Democrats have called for U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to be fired after he's been accused of leaking more military details of strikes on Houthis in Yemen. This time, 2 members of his family, including his wife and brother. This is the second time Hegseth has disclosed sensitive information, having mistakenly sent messages to The Atlantic magazine last month. In the latest leak on the Signal messaging app, Hegseth disclosed administrative procedures, including the timing of airstrikes. It went to around a dozen people, which also included his lawyer. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer asked if Trump was too weak to fire him. Still ahead, Zelensky says Russia was trying to create an impression of a ceasefire as attacks continued. Russian companies set sights on Asia as they develop new markets. And a KMB pop-up exhibition bringing special memories to the public. Welcome back. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russia of creating a false appearance of honoring an Easter ceasefire, saying Moscow continued to launch attacks after Russian President Vladimir Putin announced a unilateral temporary truce. Russia resumed attacks on Ukraine after the ceasefire expired this morning. Nazvi Karim with more.
The U.S. State Department said it was encouraged by last week's Paris discussions and Secretary of State Marco Rubio's call to his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov. But over the weekend, Rubio and President Donald Trump hinted that the U.S. may move on if no progress is made on a tangible peace plan. In Lukashivka in the Chernihiv region, Ukrainians celebrated Easter at the ruins of a damaged church. Priest Sergei Zizul blessed the people and their Easter baskets. A destroyed church is a shattered soul of the community, said Zizul, adding that people don't just come to a temple, they come with faith, with hope and with prayer. The faithful, meanwhile, are keeping a wary eye for potential Russian attacks. Resident Olga Rudeno said no one is fooled by any ceasefire. It seems to me that it will not be a day, not two, not an hour, she says. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Amid the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine and strained relations with Western countries, more and more Russian companies, from food producers to skincare brands, are looking east to Asia. Some of them are using Hong Kong as a gateway to new markets. Sakura Ip reports from Moscow.
These aren't your typical Spanish or Italian hams. They are made in Russia. With each pack selling for 20 Hong Kong dollars, they cost just a fraction of imported varieties. And these ready-to-eat sausages offer you a taste of Eastern Europe at only 10 Hong Kong dollars apiece. In this Moscow meat shop, some products end up in homemade salads, a staple on Russian dinner tables. The producer behind them raked in $151 million last year, supplying the product to the domestic market and exporting them to former Soviet republics. Now the company is setting its sight on Asia. Mainland China is high on the list because of its significant market size, but importing processed meat there involves relatively cumbersome procedures and documentation. As a result, Hong Kong has emerged as the primary testing ground, with its products making their debut in the city last month. Natalia Adraskaya, the company's chief PR officer, says Hong Kong is the stepping stone to mainland China. After successfully entering the Vietnamese market last year with localized flavors such as Tom Yum, the company is now eyeing Singapore, Malaysia and South Korea. Meanwhile, this Russian skincare brand has been working on the Hong Kong market for a decade. The city now accounts for 5% of the company's total sales. Its goal is to triple that within 3 years. The company's CEO, Anna Mortanova, says Hong Kong's comparatively simple import rules give the SAR an edge over mainland China, where extra certifications are needed. As Chinese tourists are already buying the company's product at stores in Russia, its next goal is to enter the mainland market as part of its plan to make Asia its second largest market.
According to Hong Kong Trade Development Council, the trade turnover between Hong Kong and Russia has reached to around $3 billion from January to November last year. According to the statistic in 2023, the trade was mainly focused on telecommunication equipment and semiconductors. Sakura, TVB News, Moscow.
This year marks the 60th anniversary of the Choi Hung Bus Terminal. KMB held a pop-up event today featuring some nostalgic bus stops and seats that took residents on a journey back in time. Samantha Lee takes a closer look.
Choi Hung Bus Terminal, located between Choi Hung Estate and the Wisdom Garden, looked a bit different on this day. Bus stops, as well as a bus regulator's kiosk, were repainted in the classic red and yellow. An old-style route sign was also reinstalled. This once-staff canteen is now transformed into a resting facility for bus captains. However, the old signboard was once again hung up. Mr. Lai, who has been with KMB for more than 2 decades, said bus drivers used to have only 30 minutes for lunch, so they needed to hurry once they sat down for their meals in the canteen. He recalled times when he and his fellow drivers would chat and enjoy tea in the canteen. Because the new regulations allow drivers to have at least an hour for meals, many staff canteens were transformed into resting rooms. The Choi Hung Estate was established in the 60s, followed by the Choi Hung Bus Terminal in 1965, which was the largest one in the district back then. To celebrate the 60th anniversary of the terminal, KMB exhibited 2 special seats. This brown lattice cushioned chair that served passengers during the 80s and 90s should be quite familiar to many Hong Kongers, while this green plastic chair belongs to the 70s. This man said seeing these two seats brought back memories of riding on the hot dog buses, which were the now abandoned non-air conditioned buses. He said he was melting on those buses during summer, but the openable windows allowed the breeze to come inside to cool him down a bit. This bus fanatic said he recalled childhood memories of riding the bus to school.
KMB said it will consider holding similar open days again during holidays in future, hoping to bring special memories to the public. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
That's the news. Thanks for watching. Pearl Magazine is up shortly. See you then.